I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the News du Jour, a calmer space to consume the news. So my son somehow caught a little stomach bug either while we were traveling or staying at the hotel because of the power outage. So of course I have it now too, and he and I have been down for the count. If you're waiting on something from me, I really apologize. I am not moving at full speed the past couple days, so I'm a little bit behind on things. Thank you for your patience, and without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into the news. So most of today's episode, we're basically going to be going through more updates and more information that has come out about the uprising in Russia. It is really fascinating, you guys, and there's just still a lot of question marks about it, but I'm going to do my best to relay what we have learned in the past 24 hours. And then there are some human remains that were found in California that may be those of a Hollywood movie star. So we're going to jump into all this news. Let's get into it. So like I said, we're going to go ahead and start with Russia. Guys, so if you haven't listened to yesterday's episode, I highly recommend going back and listening to that now, because these updates are not really going to make sense without the context. And this is a really important news story that's going on right now. So go get those details first and come back, because you're going to want to hear more. This is insane what's going on. And the big question is, has this changed the game for the war in Ukraine? There are still so many unanswered questions surrounding this rebellion of the Wagner mercenary group, but now their leader has spoken out, and so has Putin. So we're getting a little bit more info teased out of them. Let's go over what we've learned since yesterday. So we did learn that Putin had actually threatened the families of these mercenaries, and of course, like, mercenary isn't probably the right term. They're like a paramilitary group. It's like a miniature army. And this is something that their leader took really seriously and did not take kindly to. Like I said, the group's leader has spoken out, and he says that they were not trying to oust Putin, that was not on the agenda for them with their rebellion. He said that the group was just trying to save itself, and that his invasion of Russia really should have been a quote-unquote masterclass for how Russia should have invaded Ukraine. And that comment, you guys, was definitely throwing some shade, both towards Putin, but also towards like his top military leadership, who we know these guys had beef with. He also said that the Russian people were happy to see them, which is pretty believable because they haven't had any hope in so long. Even this strange invasion maybe provided them with a little glimmer of what could be possible for them. We found out that the Kremlin was trying to force this paramilitary's 25,000 troops to formally become part of the Russian government and the Russian military. But you see, they didn't want to do that. They were committed to maintaining their autonomy as a business function, a business entity. So they didn't want to become part of the Russian government. And with all of this going on, Ukraine is seeing an opening, you guys. Putin's attention is now split between two foes. And while he can walk and chew gum at the same time, we know Putin to be an incredibly spiteful human being. And right now, the Wagner group definitely has his focus versus Ukraine. So, this is giving Ukraine an opening to plan some more and maybe get ahead a little bit. Definitely, this conflict is showing us new cracks in the Russian military that were not readily apparent before. You see, Russia has now lost its best team of fighters, making success in taking over Ukraine seem even more far-fetched, because actually this team of fighters was involved in their one military victory over the past 6 months. So it's not looking good for Russia now that these troops have rebelled against them. Pro-Russia bloggers are actually calling for the death penalty to be carried out on the Wagner group's leader for basically committing mutiny. So he has now been given asylum in Belarus, although his exact whereabouts are still unknown. Pro-Russia bloggers think he's at this one specific hotel, but hopefully if he's smart, he's not, so that he's a little bit more cautious, because there's definitely a lot of people calling for his head. Putin has also taken to the airwaves, like I mentioned, and he is trying to basically minimize the Wagner rebellion and say it wasn't this big deal. But honestly, his attempt to do so really gave the public a sense of how pissed he is, because he was visibly angry in this video footage, you guys. They really got under his skin with this. And that all really comes back to his military perception. You know, he's big on seeming like he can play with the big boys, but a team of like 25,000 men just walking casually into Russia and taking over 4 towns in a day, well, it shatters the illusion that Russia is the big bear that it once was, more like a paper tiger. He also tried to say that these troops were stopped because the Russian people united and rallied around their government, when in reality, the only thing that Russians seem to be united about is their contempt for Putin's leadership and his needless war that is increasingly landing on their doorstep. But it's hard to say what exact role this rebellion will play in the overall outcome of the war in Ukraine. But it has certainly been a shocking and revealing turn of events. I hope that in the long run, it can benefit both the Ukrainian and the Russian people, who are both held captive under the whim of Vladimir Putin. And for our final story today, we have to talk about Julian Sands. So a British actor named Julian Sands went missing while on a hike back in January. And unfortunately, human remains have just been located in the Southern California area where he went missing. Hikers were out in the wilderness doing their thing, hiking around, and they located the human remains. Sands had been featured in so many shows, you guys, namely A Room with a View from 1986, a classic, and I believe that was his breakout show. He went on, though, to be on Dexter, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Law and Order. But he ultimately appeared in 150 different film and television shows, so he had a pretty prolific career. It has been said that the substantial rains in California have made hiking in the area much more dangerous, and that areas that people are used to hiking in may be different than how they remember them, and the ground may be more shifty. Many other hikers have been affected by these changes, not just Julian. Now, it's important to note that these remains have not been confirmed to be Julian's, so we'll have to wait and see what the coroner's office says about that in the coming days, but we'll definitely keep you guys posted if we hear anything. And that, for today, is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "Life too is senseless unless you know who you are, what you want, and which way the wind blows." If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review or shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us be able to keep creating the news du jour. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/sugarfreemedia. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram and just sugarfreemedia, all one word, on TikTok. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from Oklahoma.